Actionable tips, tricks, and coachable knowledge. This is Attack Friday, episode 206.
All right, so one of the craziest ones is, unfortunately, if there was like a full-fledged nuclear exchange, a lot of those missiles will be landing in Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Nebraska, because that's where our missile fields are. The majority of them, right? Now, the thing is I don't understand why those. If it was me, I wouldn't waste my missiles on that, because those silos are going to be empty because they're all going to be headed at me.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Attack Friday, actionable tips, tricks, and coachable knowledge. I am your host, Eddie Lazary.
And I am Bennett and Eddie, who's going to scare the shit out of you today.
So today's episode, we are talking about nuclear war and ballistic missile attacks, and this comes on the heels of basically what went down in Hawaii. Let me just read you this really quick here, Bennett. Just prior to 1:20 local time p.m. on January 13th, in Hawaii, an emergency alert notification was sent out claiming a ballistic missile threat inbound Hawaii. It was a false alarm, according to state leaders and emergency officials who blamed it on an employee who, quote, pushed the wrong button. A ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill, is what the emergency alert read. While the message caused concern on social media, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency quickly responded on Twitter saying, no missile threat to Hawaii. Now, there's been a lot of news coverage on this, both on conventional news stations as well as social media. And the reason why I wanted to kind of hop on here and talk about this, one, it's relevant. Number two, I got a little upset at all of the coverage because everywhere I went, all it did was shame that poor employee. It was some government employees. I'm sure they're, making bank, right? It's probably some minimum wage government employee that literally just screwed up, right? I mean, we've all been there. And it just so happens that this was really public screw up. So, government employees make mistakes all the time, every single day. You just never hear about it or get a chance to experience what that means. But one of the things that I was really upset about is the fact that I started to ask friends and family of mine, and like I started with my wife and my kids, and I said, if we were to have received this notice, announcement on the phone or through social media that an incoming missile was on its way to the Northeast Sikh shelter, what the fuck would we do, right? Like, and we were just kind of looking at each other like, I don't know. so it really raised the question in my own mind. I think everybody's so upset and bent around the axles around how this mistake was made. The bigger question, I think, that is the big elephant in the room that nobody's really talking about or asking, that is, if this wasn't, an accident and it was for real, what would you do, right? And you could listen. Let's listen really quick, and I got a little clip of this audio here that some officials on the CNN news channel were talking about. So let's listen really quick.
Moments ago, there was, and you may have heard this, an erroneous alert that went out via text message and social media, which warned to take cover because of an imminent missile strike. Again, we are being told that was sent by error. In other words, there was a test going on, but it went out. It was never meant to go out publicly. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard tweeted this out moments ago. Hawaii, this is a false alarm. There is no incoming missile to Hawaii. I have confirmed with officials there that no missile is incoming. To talk more about this, I want to bring in CNN national security analyst Juliet Kayyem. What do we know about how this all came about, Juliet? It would be terrifying.
Well, since it's all, I know it is. So every emergency management agency is constantly testing their systems, in particular systems of communication, and more specifically, the use of social media to get information out. Think of an evacuation or a blizzard warning or whatever else. So they have to test these systems based on, how fast they can do it, what areas do they want to tell. Thankfully, this test was just that, a test. And so the odd thing is normally these go out with, either, this is a test, or, this is we're just testing the systems, rather than the text that did go out to a lot of people. It was quickly corrected, but it does tell you in this day and age how quickly the mistake gets spread and how hard it is to sort of put the genie back in the bottle.
Right. And of course, as we know, with the tensions that have been with North Korea and the vulnerability of Hawaii, where it sits out in the middle of the Pacific, there is reason that people would not just sort of brush this off.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and this is the equally troublesome aspect of this is, the good news is, let me just say this, is that it wasn't a hack. For a few minutes, I thought it might have been a hack. And that to me would be very terrifying, because it could mean that an outside source was trying to sort of manipulate U.S. government communications, which would then trigger a response. So that is at least a good news, and we have to make sure that those systems of alert are protected from outside. But obviously, given the threat that Hawaii feels like it's in, that the United States feels like it's in, a mistake like this is, I don't want to say it's unforgivable, but boy, we better learn from it, because we have to test the systems, but we also have to have the public have confidence in the systems of communication. And if there's a mistake like this, what if the next one says tsunami warning because there's been an earthquake, and people go, oh, it's another test, it's another mistake. So really important for people to have confidence in these systems, and this is a mistake and backward sliding in that regard.
Julia, did this in any way trigger the emergency broadcasting system? The tone that we're all so familiar with when they say this is just a test. Did that go off?
No, it didn't. So people, and this is how people who were following in real time, like me, sort of knew that it was probably a mistake, was that the television systems, which are on a different system from the social media platforms, were the TV stations were showing games and football and whatever else. So that was the first hint that this was a mistake. They're on different platforms for a variety of reasons, are actually owned by different entities, and of course are overseen by different government regulators. So that's not surprising. And it looks like Hawaii, we'll find out more in the next couple hours, was testing its social media emergency management apparatus in conjunction with its traditional emergency management communications. And, because they have to in this day and age, you have to communicate with people through Facebook and Twitter. This just went out so quickly with the absolutely wrong language. I mean, nothing should ever be drafted that has language like that unless it's actually happening. And someone forgot to put this is a test on the draft language.
And you could hear, Bennett, how they were just really kind of shaming the employee, right? And and really not really getting into the, there was a lot of people that, not just on this little clip that you heard, but on other news stations and radio outlets, where they would talk about, they kept saying things like, Hawaii has been going through a period of preparation, and we've made a lot of things to prepare for things like this. And a lot of they keep saying that, but then nobody gets into what are those things that they prepared, or, you know what I mean? So it just seems like this huge elephant in the room that nobody seems to really be talking about. And that's why I wanted to have this show today and talk about, I think we decided on, what are 5 things or more? We're going to probably have more than 5, but what are 5 things you can do to prepare ahead of time before you get an alert like this? And then what are 5 things you can do during a missile threat, assuming it's, a legitimate missile threat? So what say you, sir?
Dude, when I heard it, it was like laughable. I was like, you fucking kidding me, right? And then the fact that it was not a real incident, but it, of course, as you had said, makes you think, well, what the hell are people going to do?
Yeah.
If it was a real incident, like, this is not something that you learn in school, at least not now. Back in the 50s and 60s, they did. Not that it was effective.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But damn, right? So it's one of those things that makes you think, and then all the bluster between North Korea and our president. What happens?
Well, that's the
What happens if somebody, what if that really does happen? Like, what do you do?
I think that's an important distinction to make, because Hawaii has probably of all the 50 states, I think Hawaii probably has the most different types and sorts of warning or alert notifications of any other state, right? Because they're worried about tsunamis, they're worried about earthquakes, they're worried about volcano eruptions.
They're out there in the middle of the shit. Bro.
Like a lot of shit can go wrong in Hawaii, and the fact that the one alert that ended up getting sent out accidentally was one that had to do with intercontinental ballistic missile attack. In light of everything, like you said, that's going on in the news between our president and North Korea, like, they're testing that shit for a reason.
It's almost like I can't help it, but I get a little conspiratorial. I'm not like crazy conspiratorial, but there's a little bit of it there. And at the end of the day, I look at it as maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was just, let's see if this actually works. And let's make everyone know that we have this kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like, oh, you want to talk all your shit and my button's bigger than your button. Well, we could analyze the shit out of this until the days, till it comes home, regardless of whether or not some of our enemies have the missile capability. Will they even reach?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of what ifs. Okay. But anyway, but you have to, what is it we always say? You have to expect the worst and hope for the best. So
absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
That's what I'm saying. I err on the side of be prepared a lot.
Absolutely. I think it would be foolish. I mean, it's kind of easy to be in the United States and have all of the comforts of being an American citizen, as crazy as some things are in this country. But still, if you've ever stepped outside of this country, particularly in countries that aren't doing so well, like Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan, and there's tons of countries in Africa and all over the world that, let's be honest, they got some real issues, right? And and to experience some of those myself personally, come home to the United States, it's amazing how much we as Americans, one, take for granted, and two, feel like we're untouchable, right?
Oh yeah, we take the stability for granted, completely. But in our defense, literally defense. And I actually wrote a paper on this, like an actual cut. And you know what? If I can find it, we can put it in the show notes. Like, I'll put an actual copy of it. And I analyzed what it would be like for America in a head-to-head war against the rest of the world.
Right.
Conventional weapons wise, not nuclear, because that's a different animal. Right. But if you take nuclear off the table, frankly, in my analysis, we spanked the dog shit out of the rest of the world.
Right.
And I'm not lying. Like, people just don't get it. Like, when we talk about the strength of our military, I don't think people understand how more powerful we are than the average other country. You know what I mean? Like, people always put us head to head against China, or people put us head to head against Russia. Conventionally, it's not a fair fight.
Right.
It's not. I mean, so it's, we can get into the statistics, but that's not what this episode's about. So, I mean, just one little tidbit of info though. So if you take our Navy, for example, right? Our Navy, ship-wise and armament-wise, is larger than the next 8 countries combined.
Wow.
Let that sink in. Our Navy is larger than the next 8 countries. That includes Russia, China, UK, France, Germany, all, you know what I'm saying? Like the people, like the powers, right, in the world, larger than all of the next 8 combined.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy shit, right?
And that's not counting all the the battleships and stuff that are all current museums that you can go and
well, and a lot of these, that's the active fleet,
right?
That's not the reserve fleet either.
Yeah.
So you have that. Just bringing that up, and within that Navy, what is one of the largest pieces of? It's 4.5 acres of American soil that's projected power all over the fucking world, and that's an aircraft carrier, right?
Amen, brother.
We have 10 of them right now, operational. The next largest fleet has 2.
Wow.
Okay. So again, put it into perspective.
God, I love our Navy.
And yeah, it's ridiculous. That's just the Navy. So that's air, and God, it's actually a little sick. People are like, oh my God, defense spending. Yeah.
Yeah, for a reason, right?
Yes, that's for a reason.
Right.
Yes, because literally, and this is, so I did 2 scenarios. One was us projecting our power, and then us were falling back. And see, that's the Navy. That doesn't even include the Coast Guard.
Right.
So once you pull back, right, and we let's just say we pulled back to defend the homeland. It's fucking scary, actually. Mm-hmm. It's a little scary.
Well,
so anyway,
another thing that
so with that being said, so there's a lot of hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
Right. So when it comes to intercontinental ballistic missile strike / nuclear strike, you have to look for the sneaky shit, right? Mm-hmm. So it's basically akin to terrorist attack, but it's possible.
Well, let's be honest. So let's just straight be honest with ourselves right now. How long does it take a ballistic missile, intercontinental or otherwise, what's the time of flight? How long does it take to get, from the point of origin or the launch site to the intended target?
And that depends.
Right. But it's not seconds, right?
Oh, no. Like, they'll know. Like, literally, here's the other thing. We know when other countries launch shit.
Right.
This is why we have satellites. So, all right. So let's kind of move towards what we're talking about.
Yes.
So
what is the likelihood of any of these missiles in flight actually making its way through our defenses and hitting U.S. soil? It can happen, but I'm telling you right now.
It can, for sure.
I'm telling you right now.
I'm not sure the exact missile defense. We have a pretty good missile defense.
Oh, yes, system. We do. Yes, we do. And I'm telling you right now.
And it's not just like long range. There's short range. There's medium range.
We've got technology, though, that will shoot the shit out of the sky. So, again, anything is possible. But I'm telling you right now, the likelihood of, oh, my God, North Korea just launched a missile. Everybody needs to seek shelter because it's going to impact. Like I said, it's possible. We need to prepare for it. But the chances of, it would take multiple countries launching simultaneously, and it'd be basically a war of attrition, right? And that's probably more likely in terms of the threat. But 1 or 2 or a handful of ballistic intercontinental missiles, whatever, being launched from wherever and hitting U.S. soil without any type of interdiction, I think is pretty unlikely.
Yeah, very unlikely.
Yeah. But still.
But I'm not positive.
Right.
It's like we don't know for sure, but we also know that that the tech is out there and that it's in place. I mean, why the hell do you think Russia's freaking out?
Yeah, right.
About shit that we're putting in Europe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
There's a for it. So, yeah.
So let's get into this. So I wrote down 5 things because I started to ask myself the question, what if we got the alert right? And like in New Hampshire, I live in New Hampshire, you live in New York. What if we got an alert that a nuclear or a missile strike attack was imminent, and and it wasn't a drill, and it was like legit? What then, right? Now,
Right.
I did to be honest, I didn't know the answer to that. Right? Neither did anybody in my family. I'm like, okay, that's probably a problem. So, so I wrote down 5 things that you could do to prepare before shit hits the fan. And the number one is to do some research. So seriously, it's the first time I ever sat down. I went to the good old Google machine and I typed in something to the effect of fallout shelters in New Hampshire. I don't know. I mean, you keep hearing, everyone just keeps saying, oh, seek shelter, seek shelter. Okay, what does that mean? Do I just, duck and cover? Do I go find a culvert somewhere? Do I get underneath the tree? Like, is my basement cool, or is there some like state or city run, mass shelters I'm supposed to be going? I had no idea, right? So I went to the Google machine and I typed it up. And one of the things that I was amazed to learn that I didn't know ahead of time is the first thing that they recommend is understand where the potential strike locations are in your state. Meaning, if you got a nuclear facility or a large industrial something that would cripple, the country, whether it be maybe a power plant or oil refinery, or like, what is the main infrastructure of your state that would impact on a national level? And it turns out there's 3 major targets within New Hampshire that if anyone was serious about sending over any type of nuclear or missile attack, they would probably benefit by hitting one of these 3 as opposed to just killing a bunch of moose in northern New Hampshire, right? And one of them is in Concord, the other one is in Portsmouth, and the third one's in Nashua. And it was interesting because I didn't know this about my state, and I've been here since 2005. So I put research as number 1 because when you start doing the research, dude, I learned a ton. Another thing that they talked about I didn't even consider is understanding the prevailing winds. And there was a map that there's a map that I looked at and it talked about the prevailing winds in the north in the country. And basically, if a nuclear attack were to happen from where we live, Bennett, you and I, if a nuclear attack were to happen in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Missouri, or Colorado, we would be in direct line due to the natural prevailing winds. So it would be actually more dangerous for a nuclear attack to happen in one of those 6 states than it would be necessarily to happen in our own state. I mean, granted, the initial blast would suck, but all the fallout would continue eastward out into the ocean. So interesting shit, man. So I think number 1.
Well, have you looked at the maps of the clusters?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
All right. So one of the craziest ones is, unfortunately, if there was like a full-fledged nuclear exchange, a lot of those missiles will be landing in Montana, North Dakota,
right,
Wyoming, and Nebraska, because that's where our missile fields are.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of them, right?
Yep.
Now, the thing is I don't understand why those. If it was me, I wouldn't waste my missiles on that, because those silos are going to be empty because they're all going to be headed at me.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I never bought the idea of that's where they're going to target. That doesn't make any damn sense to me. So
yeah,
just putting that out there.
So definitely research. You'll learn. Just type in your state, nuclear fallout or fallout shelters, and then your state, and just see what your state has done for information. And I'll be honest with you, these websites that I'm looking at are absolutely horrible. They're first generation websites. You could tell they were maintained by some dude that, somebody at the state says, can anyone build a website? And somebody raised their hand, I can. And so
I can.
it's like it's like the generation of websites just post MySpace, right? I mean, these are horrible websites, but there's still information in here that I didn't know, so it's still useful. It may not be pretty. I don't know. Maybe your state's gotten an updated content, but my state is absolutely horrific in terms of the layout and the design. But the information's there. So that's number one, research. Number two, I also found out that the old state buildings used to have, the old fallout shelter signs, like on the outside of the buildings.
Yeah.
And they left them there because it was more of a historical, from back in World War II and the Cold War. It was kind of like the thing. But nowadays, those buildings wouldn't serve as fallout shelters. So they started, because people started to ask them, is this a fallout shelter? It's got a sign outside the building that's the fallout. And so they're starting to take down these signs off of these old buildings that they just left up there because of historical reasons. But now all of a sudden, it's becoming like a real thing. And so the whole coming together and shelter into a common municipal type shelter, that's old school way of thinking. They don't recommend that anymore. They recommend sheltering in place wherever you might be. So that's just kind of a note there. Number two,
which is wondering though, why do they say shelter in place?
Why do they say that now?
Yeah. Was there an answer?
No, they gave. No, they just said that the gathering in one location to shelter, or having a large shelter is old school, and it's the old way of thinking, and the new way, the preferred method in today's threat level in the world is to shelter in place. Right. I think it's because, I don't know, maybe the population has grown. Obviously, that's one reason. I think two, there's just not enough. There's not enough shelter.
No, there's not. I mean, when it comes down to it, what you want is you would want to be in one of those old ass buildings, though. One of those old big stone block buildings,
right?
Like down in the bay.
Yeah.
Frankly, that's where you'd want to be,
right?
If it was a nuclear strike, because you want to put as much mass between you and the blast.
Right.
Thick walls, concrete, brick, earth, anything like that. Like subway tunnels are fantastic. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, some portions could collapse and you might get stranded down there a little while, but you're right. You're gonna survive the roasting that's happening above ground, right?
Right. The roasting.
The roasting.
Correct. Yeah, you want mass.
Yeah.
Literal mass between you and the blast,
yep.
As much, and not your paper mache house.
Right.
Just saying.
I think
at least go down to your basement.
And number two is to have an immediate shelter. Now, obviously, good old Kim Jong-un's not going to call you up and be like, "Yo, bro, are you home? Are you ready? I'm about to do this." Like, the shit's going to come when you least expect it. It's going to happen when you're at work, or when you and your family are, on vacation, or when you're separated somewhere, or it may happen while you're at home. But, I mean, it's going to come wherever, and you've got to be prepared to have or to seek an immediate shelter wherever that might be. Now, it's almost like when I was in Iraq, your head was on a swivel, and you're always, no matter where you were, what you were doing, you're always thinking about, if shit was to pop off right now, where would I go? Right? Would I dip behind that alley? Would I, duck behind the car? Like, we were always thinking about, if shit hit the fan, where am I going to go next? Where's that initial, security location going to be? And then where am I going to move after that? Right? So even though we're not in the middle of Iraq dealing with the Mahdi army, we are at home and we're dealing with a real threat. And so I'm not saying live your life in fear all the time, but you need to be cognizant of the environment that you are in and the state that the world is in. And we're not in a very stable world, and therefore that should dictate your thought about your environment. So if you're going to the store, you're going on vacation, or you're at work, or whatever the case may be, you should think about, if I were to get an alert right now that a missile is incoming, and I got the alert to seek shelter, where would that be? And you just listed a few very good suggestions of what that might look like. Can you give us a few more examples of what a shelter-in-place environment might be?
Well, it's really is what it is really you want to find a place that's got like a shit ton of concrete, right? Or is really, really thick brick, or a lot of earth. So obviously under, like if you have a basement, it's going to be way better than the first floor of a building. So go to the basement, right?
Yep.
Because you want as much mass between you because of radiation. So the radiation, some of it, you're going to get hit with some of it anyway, depending on how close the blast is. There's the different classes of radiation, but I'm not going to go into a class here about that. They're like alpha, beta, gamma, and the different things that will stop that and things that won't, right? So just think of that as mass. You want as much mass between you and the blast as possible. So the lower, the better. The more stuff over your head, the better. And you know what? I mean, the missiles are going to fall where they may, right? So that's a roll of the dice. There's no completely safe spot, period. But if you mitigate as many issues as you can.
If you're driving in your car, you might want to find a place to pull over and seek a hard structure, right? I mean,
yeah, or at least find something, yeah. And it always depends. If you're in a city, obviously places like the bottoms of parking garages and things like that are fantastic. Tunnels are great.
Yep.
Underground. That's where you want to go.
Yep.
Okay. Period.
Very cool. Number 3, have a follow-on shelter out of the city. So you've got your immediate shelter in place, but you should also think about where's my fallback. I was a forward observer, and we always had what was called a primary OP and a secondary OP. So the primary OP is where we wanted to be as our first choice. But if we were compromised or overrun or we needed to move for whatever reason, we always had at least one other alternate OP. This is really no different. So you got your shelter in place, and that might be a very impromptu decision. I mean, if I'm at work and I know that I go to work every day, I'm going to think about where I would shelter in place at work. So if I got the alarm, boom, I would know where I'd go, right? But if I'm traveling on a highway somewhere and I get the alert, I'm going to get off the highway and I'm going to go, and where that might be, where I may end up going is going to be different, right? So you can't really plan ahead like that, but just know that you've got to get out of, a vehicle, get out of, off the streets, get out of the little, flexible wooden structures, get as low as you can, get in, into something with mass down in the basement, like, get surrounded with as much as you can to protect you from the blast and fallout.
So one of the things I want to bring up is this too, is having something in either your office or your car, like, and I would suggest a backpack, right? That's got 72 hours worth of supplies.
Like a jump bag, right?
Food. Yeah, like a bug out bag, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? But something that's got food, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about non-perishable stuff like granola bars and shit that you could, if you had to, live on for a few days, right? And a bunch of bottled water, right? Or I would say not I would say have like a survival straw or something. And we could actually put links for all this stuff up in the show notes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So, yeah, man.
So, but the reason I say this is because if you get hit with a nuclear blast, there's also the fallout from the electromagnetic pulse that could be there, right? Meaning that all electronics could be fried. And if they're not necessarily, it doesn't mean that they're all going to fry, because cars are pretty resilient to it, because most of them even now are still made with metal. A lot of them, even though they do rely on computers and other things, your car may or may not work. So you may be huffing it, my friends.
Yeah, right.
So put a backpack on and have something that you can walk with. And I would also suggest having a pair of like walking shoes or boots in your either at work or in your car. And these are just simple things. You can put them in your trunk. Not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really not a big deal. You know, you don't have to talk about your people, your friends and your family might look at you like you're fucking crazy. But that's not the point. The point is that you're ready. And it doesn't take anything except for having a backpack. Big deal. Big whoop, right?
Mm-hmm.
$20 worth of shit in a backpack for peace of mind that you may have enough, stuff to get to, if you live outside of a city or outside in the suburban area, you can probably walk there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you need to, but you're not going to want to shelter in place longer than you have to get to your family.
Right. Exactly.
I know I'm not gonna.
No.
So, and your car may or may not work.
Right.
And other cars may or may not work. So the next thing you know is those roads that are so awesome are useless because it's a parking lot now.
Exactly right.
So
yeah.
So in that case, I would say that's a pretty good deal,
Yeah. All right. So number 4 is work with a group. Now, some people are going to poo-poo this. They're going to be like, no, I'm going to be in control of my own destiny if something like this goes down. I don't want to have to rely on other people. I understand that frame of thought. I even probably have some of that myself. But at the end of the day, if shit goes down, man, you're going to need to pool your resources. And maybe that's a community event or neighbors or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's just some close friends. Maybe your shelter outside of the city is somebody that you know or you're friends with that has a lake house, and that's where that's gonna be everybody's rally point. And you got maybe 3 or 4 families that all congregate there, and you pool your food and your water and your personal protection, whatever that case may be. Working with groups is their strength in numbers, and let's be honest, when this goes down, shit's gonna be crazy, man. And it's what we're used to in terms of the security and law and order and the police force and all that is gonna start to crumble, and it's gonna turn into anarchy. When we invaded Iraq, 2003, and we were fighting the conventional, Iraqi military, until to the point where they just kind of tucked tail and ran away, that infrastructure within Iraq completely disappeared. The police force went away, the military went away. There was no law and order, and everything literally just went to shit. There was looting. Anything that wasn't bolted down was gone. People were stripping everything. There was a duty-free mall right outside of our fob that was like 3 stories that once upon a time had escalators and all. I mean, it was like a legit mall, and everything was a fucking ghost town, man. They had stripped every piece of everything out of that mall. They burnt it, and the whole city was like that. Everything was destroyed. Everything was destroyed. Nothing worked. There was no electricity. There was no phones. There was no TV. Everything just came. I mean, literally, just went back into the 1400s. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean. Because I want people to realize that, I mean, we have instances of this in our own country.
Yeah.
Like Katrina. I mean, cops abandoned their posts. Cops, firefighters abandoned. They went home because they have families too.
Yep.
Shit doesn't work if people aren't there to tend it.
Yep. That's right.
So your power doesn't run if somebody's not there to freaking switch over shit when it needs to be done. You get this, folks? I mean, people take that shit for granted. People take electricity for granted because that's the other thing an EMP will do. It'll knock out electricity.
Yep.
And you know what? It can knock out electricity for months.
Right.
Not just like days, not just hours, months.
Oh, yeah, because it's not like you could just go and flip a breaker and turn it back on. It melts shit.
Right.
I mean,
and who the fuck is going to replace the shit?
Right. Yeah, right.
If it's chaos, nobody. So you're screwed.
Yeah.
That's it. It's over. So it's what I always say. We're always in this country. We're always 72 hours from disaster.
Yeah.
72 hours, because that's about how much food is in the grocery stores. And could you imagine going 3 days without power?
Oh my God.
I mean, we have,
Yeah.
and we've lived that way, but the normal American, no fucking way, bro.
Right.
No way. No. Hell to the no. And you know what? It's inevitable. You're not going to have power.
Yep.
For quite a while. So, I mean, and then look at the outage, the power outage that went down for like 2 days. We didn't have power in the Northeast. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. And I remember sitting out on my porch listening to a radio. Everybody's like, well, how's your radio working? I said, because I'm fucking prepared.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
I had a crank radio. Like, I have a crank radio that's got shortwave, NOAA, and AM FM.
Yep.
You know? So, yeah, so we were able to hear of exactly what was going on. People were like, oh my God, are we being attacked? Yada, yada. Like, people just didn't know because there was
They're like, wait a minute, my phone doesn't work? Come on now.
Yeah. Cell phones didn't work,
Yeah.
this and that. You know, seriously.
Yeah.
So it's a frame of mind. And we're spoiled in this country.
Oh, yeah.
We
Very,
really are.
very spoiled. Yeah. Number 5, stock supplies, food, water, medical, protection, and a radio, like you've already alluded to. And I mean, those are the basics, right? I mean, if you want to build on that and you know, have more than that
you
somewhere.
can get as crazy.
Yeah, you can
get crazy.
Yeah, you can become like a straight up prepper and just, you know, have a
Prepper, right.
bunker underground. But you need to have some basic food, some water, or at least a means to retrieve water. Because I got a well, right, at my house, which is great. But if I have no power, my pump doesn't work. So how in the hell am I going to get water out of my well?
Or if it becomes contaminated at that.
Right. Medical supplies. What type of medical supplies do we need? Just, you know, probably some basic stuff, right? Shit can happen, and we need to be able to, because, you know.
I mean, think about it. Diabetics.
Yeah, exactly, right.
All that stuff, you know. I mean, if you don't have your insulin, and that shit needs to be refrigerated too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
A lot of it does, yes. Yep.
Damn, son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't eat any sugar.
Right.
You know what I mean? You better change your diet quick. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's things like that are, you know, I would say minimum have 2 weeks of food and water. And that's water. If you're sheltering in place, it can totally be done. You need about a gallon of water per person per day. So
let's do the math here.
I got a lot of fucking water.
You got what, 5 in your family?
6 actually.
Okay, 6.
I mean five that live here. We got 6 that live with me.
Yeah. Okay, so 6.
So 6 that live with
6 in your 6 in your household. So that's 6 gallons per day times 14, which is what?
Yeah. You would ask me.
We're gonna.
Well, it's 6. 6 times 4 is what? 40.
I got a calculator. Hold on. 6 times.
Jesus Christ! Look at us. We're like fucking
6
retards.
times 14. 84 gallons, my friend. So just call it shy of 100 gallons, right?
I actually have more than that, but
okay.
Yes.
Now again, is that gallon per person per day? Is that just drinking or is that that drinking, cooking, hygiene? Is that all of it?
Yes, that's everything.
Okay.
Hygiene, everything.
Yeah.
It's just a good
kind of rule of thumb, huh?
Guideline to go by.
Yeah.
Is a gallon of water per day per person.
Right.
Obviously, kids are going to use less. Obviously, if you need it to go longer, you can. But it's like one of those things. Like, do simple shit. Like, if you know something's coming, fill your fucking bathtubs.
Right.
You know, I mean, anything like that. Yeah,
man.
I'm just saying there's all kinds of techniques, and I should write a book on this shit. But anyway,
yeah, man.
You know, so seriously, yeah, a gallon of water per day per person, and then you should also have a way to filter water. Yeah. But you know, we can get crazy, so that's why I always say we'll have stuff in the show notes.
Okay. So to recap, 5 things you could do to prepare number one, do your research. Look it up. Learn something about this topic. Don't just bury your head in the sand and pretend like everything's okay and you're not affected by it. Because trust me, if this happens, you will be affected, whether you like it or not. It's just because you don't, just because you don't like it doesn't make it any less real.
Or ignore it,
right.
because too often we play ostrich in this
That's
country.
right.
And
I think at the end of the day, you have to take some personal ownership. You just can't rely on, state and local and national officials to do everything for you. You got to take some ownership here. You're responsible for you and your family, and that's at the bottom line, right? Now you could just drive you and your family down to the to state office, park outside there and camp on their front lawn and say, "I'm here, take care of me." You may be disappointed when they run out of shit to take care of you with, right? So you got to show some ownership.
Oh, God, I mean, and it's one of those things like you can't prepare for everything, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
But I always go worst case. And my scenario, you know what? Before we go into the next thing, I'm just going to give you my scenario of worst case. It'll take me about 2 minutes,
Okay.
Right? I think you and I have had this conversation. But with nuclear weapons, you have the ability to airburst these things, right? Mm-hmm. And so what that means is that they explode them in the atmosphere, right? Above, not it doesn't detonate when it hits the ground. It detonates at like a mile or two above the ground. Okay. Mm-hmm. So imagine an airburst or an airburst nuclear weapon blowing off at like 3 miles up. Okay. So at about 15,000 feet. And the area that EMP, that electromagnetic pulse, will cover is immense. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of miles, right? They don't have to actually blow us up. They just need to knock out our electrical grid, right?
Yeah.
Now, our electrical grid, there's only 3 of them. We have 3 grids in the United States that are woefully unprotected, right? This is all general knowledge, so it's not like I'm giving away the keys to the castle. You know what I mean?
Right.
We have an East Coast grid, a West Coast grid, and a Texas. Texas has its own grid. Why that is, not positive, but they're smart. So you have the 3 different grids, and all are very vulnerable to this air blast type thing. So let's say you get 4 or 5 nuclear detonations in the air, and who knows? It doesn't have to come from a continental. It could come from a freaking terrorist cell that freaking loads the shit up on an airplane. Just saying. Just imagine this, right? Mm-hmm. We lose power for the foreseeable future, for a long time. That's all they need to do to cause complete fucking chaos, right? Yep. And that's where the shit goes down. Like, what are you gonna do? Basically, they just cause the apocalypse in North America. Mm-hmm. With that type of shit. Because if you think that the government's gonna roll in to freaking save the day with that shit, it's impossible. Impossible. So many people are gonna die. So how are you going to prepare for that?
Right.
That's kind of that's what I mean. I'm scaring the shit out of you, because that's doomsday shit. That's like worst case scenario. So think of any kind of little way that you can mitigate that for you and your family. And that's a start. Mm-hmm. That's what we're kind of talking about here.
Yep.
Short of having a bunker, like, crazy town bunker freaking built under your house or out in the woods somewhere, which, trust me, I know people that have those. Just saying. Yeah.
So the 5 things you could do to prepare is do some research, have an immediate shelter in place location for you and your families, and think of contingencies if you're not in and around your immediate shelter in place. Where do you go? Have a follow-on shelter in place location out of the city. And again, this takes some planning and preparation ahead of time. Work with a group. You can pool resources, and you've got strength in numbers. And number 5, stock supplies at a minimum: food, water, medical, protection, personal protection, and a radio, and not a battery-operated one either, a crank radio. So those are the 5. And again, like I said, there's way more than 5 things you can do, but I think if you start with these 5, you're probably more prepared than, I don't know, 80% of the rest of the country.
90? Probably 90%.
Yeah. So now we're going to get in real quick to the 5 things you can do during a missile threat. So if you were in Hawaii and you did get that alert and it was legit, right? It wasn't an employee somewhere that pushed the wrong button, but it was a legit alert. What do you do? Number 1, I have remain calm and collected. Why? Because there's going to be plenty of fucking people out there that won't. Trust me. Chaos, and it's just going to spread. And we know this. Being in the military, we know the dangers of what panic can do, right? And it's
contagious.
Oh, very contagious. Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to, you yourself, remain calm and collected, because it was not that long ago. There was I forget what happened, but somebody in my family ended up, getting hurt. Right? They got, not like deathly hurt, but like severely injured themselves somehow, and everybody's like freaking out, running around the house like, oh my God, what do I do? And it's just like, calm down. It's okay. They're not going to die. Yes, there's a lot of blood, but it's manageable. Let's just take care of it, and just maintaining that calm. That because everybody is looking to me as as the husband, as the father, as the combat veteran that has seen awful things. Like, they're kind of looking to me to gauge like how panicked. They're looking at me thinking to themselves, how bad is this really, and should I really, really panic? And I think if I would have lost my shit, right, oh my God, they would have been fucking done. You know what I mean? But because I remained calm and collected and kept my shit about myself, like everybody kind of fed off of that energy, and everybody kind of relaxed a little bit too. And we were able to deal with the situation and get it taken care of. It was not a problem, right? But this is what happens when all this goes down. People are not going to be prepared. They're not going to know what to do. They're not going to be able to reach their loved ones. They're not going to be able to communicate or drive where they want to go or do, you know what I mean? Like, they are going to fucking panic. And they're going to go and they're going to strip all the stores out. Like you said, it'll take about 72 hours before all that's gone. They're going to...
what's crazy though is, why the fuck are you stealing a big screen TV?
Right, but that's going to happen. It's going to happen, right?
Yeah, it is, but it makes me laugh. It's laughable.
Right. Everything's going to get taken, right? Everything's going to get, because people will prey on that. They'll be like, I don't really give a shit, but I'm gonna pawn this and make some money in this whole thing, whatever. Because they know that the infrastructure is going to shut down. The police force is going to be overwhelmed. They're not going to be probably worried about chasing down petty thieves. They're going to be worrying about much bigger things, and people are going to take advantage of that. That's just natural. It's just going to happen, right? So remain calm and collected. Number 2, move to your immediate shelter in place. Now remember, we've already sheltered in place, our immediate shelter in place. That's already happened. Now we got to move to I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Yeah, you're going to move to your immediate shelter in place. So wherever that might be, your initial, when you get the alert and they say seek shelter, like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Right? Do that first. And then number 3, always remember the top 3 rules for survival. Number 1, get out of the cities. Number 2, get out of the cities. And number 3, probably most important, get out of the cities. Because, right? Because being in the cities is the worst place you could be in an event like this, because gridlock happens, mass chaos and panic happens, looting's going to happen. It's very easy to get caught up in, people losing their damn minds. People are going to get, shot and killed while their cars are being stolen. People are going to fight with tire irons to try to get the last drop of gasoline out of the gas stations. I understand this is what great movies are made of, but it's not funny when you're in the middle of this shit and it's happening to you. The chances of this happening increase when you're in the larger metropolitan areas. It's just, if you're in New York City, if you're in Boston, if you're in whatever, even the smaller cities, if you're in those smaller cities, you can get caught up on this. You gotta get out away from the cities as much as you can. Number 4, have a rally point predetermined, and do not count on your cell phones. You will not be able to get a hold of your loved ones, your wife, your children, your significant other, your friends, your family members. Even if the EFP doesn't take out the cell service, hold on, my dog's going crazy. Even if the EFP doesn't take out the cell service, everybody's going to be on their phone, and it's going to be completely gridlocked.
Yeah,
jammed, and you're not
up.
going to be able to get the calls out. People experienced this on 9/11 when that happened in New York. Literally, everybody was completely shut down from a communication standpoint. Number 5, follow government instructions, but don't get caught up in all the anarchy that will ensue. All right? So even though it's important to follow the government, local and state and national agencies, but do some thinking for yourself at the same time. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So what have we learned here today, Bennett?
That we are woefully unprepared as a society.
Yeah, man. I agree.
We really are. We really are. I mean, yeah, I guess it's one of those things like you can live in fear, because you can go down this rabbit hole really fast. You really can. And just kind of look at everything and go, oh my God, it's a threat. Oh my God, it's a threat. I think you need to put caps on it though. So you kind of have to be able to say, yes, this is legitimate. And if I'm prepared, what's the harm?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Because at least I'm prepared for multitudes of things. I'm not just saying nuclear war or whatever. There's millions of things, especially like where we live. Like I was telling you the other day, my power went out. Luckily, I have a backup generator, but you know what I mean? What if that were to happen? Like sometimes we get storms bad enough to, really cause some issues.
Yep.
And if you're prepared, at least you'll have food. You don't have to rely on going to the grocery store. There's all kinds of things, backup heat sources, things like that. You just kind of have to think, reasonably, what can I do reasonably to be prepared for stuff? So
yeah, man.
That's how I look at it.
Very cool. Interesting discussion. And so after you get done listening to this show, if you think back on the events that happened in Hawaii and just think about and look at all the news channels, and everyone is so bent around the axles about how a government employee could have pushed the wrong button. That's a great question. I hope we come up with an answer and a solution to that problem, and I hope it never happens again. But that aside, isn't that not, that's not the biggest question we should be asking ourselves, should it?
Well, no. It's one of those things is I think it's makes a real point to the world or to us as our citizenry. Like we actually do have a missile defense system. Like we actually do have early warning systems, right? For this stuff. Why are they in place? It's not because we're, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They wouldn't put the government, for God's sakes, doesn't do anything without a plan. You know what I mean? Frankly, and if it's in place because they're doing it, it's because it's on somebody's radar.
That's right.
I'm just saying. Yep. So if they're worried about it, you should probably worry about it. Not the adage where, well, if they're worried about it, then I don't have to worry about it. But that's complete shit.
Yeah. And worrying about it,
you have to.
Worrying about it and obsessing and panicking over it, two different things.
Everyone always complains about how reactive our society is, and that's so true. Mm-hmm. Let's break that mold. Let's break that tedium of shit, that reactive way that our society is to things. Instead, why don't you do this for once in your life and be proactive about something? All right.
Yeah, man.
And be proactive about the security of your family and your community. Ask those questions, right?
Yep.
Just saying.
Well, thank you, sir.
That's civic freaking interaction. And people are like, what the fuck do I want to do that for? Well, because that shit like this gets brought up.
Yeah.
Then.
And unfortunately, if shit hits the fan, you won't have a way to go back and listen to this episode. You're gonna be fine.
Not unless you have like an iPod with stuff on
Yeah,
it.
like downloaded. Yeah.
That doesn't get fried. It'd be like some Book of Eli shit. You ever see that movie?
Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
Nice. All right, my friend.
Just saying.
Thanks for the show. Great topic. I think it's relevant.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming up with it.
Yeah, man. Thanks
for thinking about it and going, hey, we should do a show on what do you actually do?
Actionable tips, tricks, and coachable knowledge. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. I hope you guys much out of this as we did, at least I did, putting it together. I learned a lot about my own state and unpreparedness for an event such as this. So this was as much for my own benefit and education as it was for Bennett's amusement to come on here and talk about something that he's already been doing for many years now. So I got a lot of catching up to do. I do appreciate you tuning in to this episode. I got a dog in the background. Can you hear that? Shut up.
I can. Yeah. It's fine. It's really funny though.
Puppy.
It's all good.
Yeah, but folks, tune in to other episodes of Change Your POV Podcast Network and all of its other shows by heading over to changeyourpov.com. We have a lot more great content headed your way. And hey, we are asking people directly to help us spread the word. You could do that by heading over to iTunes, searching for Change Your POV Podcast, and finding the show and leaving an honest rating and review. Oh, and another thing I just found out that you can do. Do you have
subscribe, rate, and review?
Subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating or review. Do you have Alexa, Bennett?
I do.
Yeah. So do you know? I just tried it today. I read an article and I was like, oh, let me try. So if you say, Alexa, play Change Your POV Podcast on TuneIn, she will come back and they'll play the latest release.
All right, hold on. You ready? Alexa, play Change Your POV Podcast on TuneIn.
I could not find a program named Change Your PLV on TuneIn.
So you got to say POV very clearly because it thinks you're saying PLV. It did that to me too.
Alexa, say play Change Your POV on TuneIn.
Sorry, I don't know that.
Twat.
Do it again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, do it again.
There we go. Alexa, play Change Your POV on TuneIn.
KPOV-FM from TuneIn.
What the fuck? Hold on. Let me move it over. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Oh my God. This is even funnier. Alexa, stop. Alexa, play Change Your POV on TuneIn.
KPOV-FM from TuneIn.
Oh my God. Why won't it work, Eddie?
It worked for me.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, play Change Your POV on TuneIn.
KPOV-FM.
Maybe.
Alexa, shut the fuck up.